Good morning, students. Let's continue our part 5 of the line by line explanation of the lesson, The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. But before we begin, let us have a quick recap of what we learned earlier. Antonio had taken a loan of 3,000 ducats from Shylock, the Jewish money lender, to help Bassanio to go to Belmont to win over Portia. Now, Antonio was confident that he would be able to pay back the money on the given date. But it so happened that Antonio got news of the loss of all his ships and he was not able to pay back Shylock's money on the given date. His bond to the Jew was forfeited. So, the day of the payment being passed, the cruel Jew would not accept the money that Bassanio offered him and insisted on having a pound of flesh as written in the agreement. So a date was fixed for the trial of this unusual case. Now Portia furnished Bassanio with 20 times the amount and sent him immediately to Venice to meet Antonio. She herself dressed as a counselor along with Nerissa as her clerk and set out for the trial court upon the advice of Bellario, her relation who was a counselor at Padua. She fights the case and pleads for Antonio. She outwits the Jew and scolds Bassanio and earns the court's appreciation as a wise and just counselor. Shylock calls her a second Daniel. As Shylock was bent upon to have his lawful claim to a pound of Antonio's flesh, now Portia tells Antonio that he must get ready to his bosom cut by Shylock's knife. Now, children, we had completed our learning of this lesson till the end of page 61. Now, Antonia has to get ready for the knife. So, let's begin from page 62 onwards. So let's see. Now you can see in the picture, Shylock is ready with his knife, ready and keenly desiring Antonio's heart. So Antonio is ready with his, he has been tied to his seat and ready with his bosom. He is showing his bosom from where Shylock is supposed to cut off his flesh. So let's see what happens. Antonio is sad, of course, you can see that. And let's see what happens from page 62. So while Shylock was sharpening a long knife with great eagerness to cut off the pound of flesh, so what happens? Let's see. Portia said to Antonio, "Have you anything to say?" Now Portia, as a counselor in disguise, has pronounced her verdict and has asked Antonio to get ready for the knife. So apparently, Shylock is very keen. You can see he's very keen to cut off the pound of flesh. And then Portia asks Antonio whether he has got anything to say. Antonio with a calm resignation. So Antonio with uncomplaining frustration replied that he had but little to say, that he has got nothing to say. For that he had prepared his mind for death and that he was prepared to die. Then he said to Bassanio, "Give me your hand, Bassanio, fare you well." So he asked for Bassanio's hand. He shook hands with Bassanio and told him, gave him a goodbye, a farewell. "Grieve not that I am fallen into this misfortune for you." So he told Bassanio not to be sad, not to grieve, because he's got into this misfortune, and commend me to your honorable wife. So he told Bassanio to praise him and tell him about him to his honorable respected wife and tell her how I have loved you. So also tell her about him and how much he loved Bassanio. So Bassanio, in the deepest affliction, replied, "Antonio, I am married to a wife who is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not esteemed with me above your life." So when Antonio said goodbye to him, Bassanio was very deeply afflicted, meaning he was very, very greatly pained. And then he told Antonio that he is married to a lady who is very dear to him as much as his life. But life itself, his life, his wife, and all the world are not valuable, esteemed, or valuable with him and above Antonio's life for him. So I would lose all. He could lose all. He could sacrifice everything. I would sacrifice all to this devil here to deliver you. So Bassanio said that he is ready to sacrifice everything that he had to deliver him from the cruel Jew. Portia, hearing this, though the kind hearted lady was not at all offended with her husband for expressing the love he owed to so true a friend as Antonio in these strong terms, yet could not help answering. So, what happened? Portia, of course, she was there very much in court, but hearing, disguised, of course, hearing what her husbands talked about her or told Antonio about her, was a little not offended, of course, not annoyed with her husband, but still, because she knew that he owed so much to a true friend as Antonio, and he's talking to him in these strong terms because such is the condition with Antonio. So, yet could not help answering. So, she couldn't keep quiet at that comment that Bassanio made and said, your wife would give you little thanks if she were present to hear you make this offer. So, Bassanio, your wife, if she would have heard you talking like this, would have never at all appreciated what you said. And then Gratiano, who loved to copy what his lord did, though he must make a speech like Bassanio's, and he said, in Neresa's hearing, who was writing in a clerk's dress by the side of Portia. So what happened? Gratiano, who heard Bassanio say all what he said about his wife, also wanted to copy. He became a copycat and also wanted to say something, pronounce something just like his master. And he said he loved to copy what his lord did. So he loved to copy his master. So though he must make a speech like Bassanio's, he said in Neresa's hearing, what did he say? Let's listen. Who was writing? So Neresa was writing because she was the clerk, and dressed as the clerk by the side of Portia, she was writing something. I have a wife whom I protest I love. So Gratiano said, I too have a wife, and I protest, mean I declare that I love her. I wish she were in heaven, but still I wish she would have been this time at heaven, if she could but entreat some power there to change the cruel temper of this currish Jew. So if she would have been in heaven, she would have prayed, she would have entreated, that is, prayed for some power there to change the cruel temper of this Jew. So he said that he wanted to pray, he wanted her to pray for to change the temper or to change the character of this quarrelsome, currish Jew is quarrelsome, or what do we call, restless Jew who is ready to argue and fight and quarrel. So it is well you wish this behind her, else you would have but an unquiet house, said Neresa. So Neresa, hearing this, also commented. So she couldn't keep quiet, and she also commented. What did she say? That it is good that you're talking at the back of your wife. Else, otherwise, you would have but an unquiet house. Otherwise, your house would have been an unquiet, a restless house where there would have been fights because of what you said about your wife. So let's see what happens here. You can see Antonio tied up so that when his pound of flesh is cut, he won't make a shout. He won't shout out of pain. So he's been tied and his mouth is gagged. You can see here. And these two ladies, Portia and Nerissa. Nerissa as a clerk, she's writing, and Portia pronouncing the verdict. Now we move on to the next paragraph. Shylock Knight cried out impatiently. So listening to all these arguments and talk, Shylock was impatient. He was very getting annoyed. We trifle time. We waste time. I pray, pronounce the sentence. So he said there that we are wasting time. You go on, pronounce the sentence, give the verdict. And now all was awful expectation in the court, and every heart was full of grief for Antonio. So everyone in court was full of awful expectation. They were all waiting for a kind of, a dreadful expectation in the court. They all dreaded for Antonio. What is going to happen to Antonio? Every heart was full of sadness for Antonio. They were full of pain for Antonio. Portia asked if the scales were ready to weigh the flesh. So Portia naturally inquired as a counselor whether the scales were ready to weigh, to measure the flesh. And she said to the Jew, Shylock, you must have some surgeon by. She asked Shylock whether he has got a doctor beside him, lest he bleed to death. Otherwise, lest means otherwise, he would be bleeding to death. Because when he cuts off the flesh from Antonio's heart, naturally, he would be bleeding and he'll die. So Shylock, whose whole intent was that Antonio should bleed to death, said, it is not so named in the bond. So Shylock, whose intent, his aim or purpose in life was that Antonio should bleed to death. Antonio should die. He wanted Antonio to die. So he said, this is not written in the bond. Portia replied, it is not named in the bond, but what of that? So she said that yes, it is not written in the bond that he should have a surgeon beside him while the bond is being exercised. But what of that? What about mercy? It were good you did so much for charity. So Portia reminded it would have been good if you had a doctor beside you to take care of this man. To this, all the answer Shylock would make was, I cannot find it. It is not in the bond. So to all this argument, all this talk, Shylock had one answer. I cannot find it, meaning he did not find a doctor. And it is not neither in the bond. So once it is not in the bond, it is not necessary according to Shylock. Then, said Portia, a pound of Antonio's flesh is thine. So Portia said, she pronounces the verdict. A pound of Antonio's flesh is thine. Thine means Old English for yours. So the law allows it. She said the law permits it. The law is permissible, or the law is permitting you to take a pound of flesh from Antonio's body. And the court awards it. And the court also gives you this. So this is your right, you get it from the court. And you may cut this flesh from off his breast. And then Portia said that he could cut the flesh from his breast. The law allows it. The law is allowing this to you. And the court awards it. The court is also giving you this. Again Shylock exclaimed, oh wise and upright judge. So Shylock is very elated. He's very happy. And then he calls him upright judge, a very wise and just judge, a very true judge, a very, just judge. So a Daniel is come to judgment. Now a Daniel is come to judgment is a idiom or a phrase, which means a just person, one who is wise. A wise person has come to settle a difficult dispute. And then he sharpened his long knife. What did he do? He sharpened his long knife, and then he's ready to, eagerly looking on Antonio and he said, come, prepare. And then he's calling Antonio to prepare. You can see Bassanio with the money. He's ready with the money. And listening to Portia is talking to Shylock. So all of them are ears, and here you can see Shylock, his eyes ready, eager to listen to what's happening in the court. So let's move on to the next paragraph. Tarry a little, Jew, said Portia. There is something else. Wait a little, Jew. Stop or wait. Wait a moment, little. That means wait a moment, Jew, said Portia. There is something else. Here's something else. This bond here gives you no drop of blood. The words expressly are a pound of flesh. So Portia immediately tells him, stop, Jew. This bond does not allow you even a single drop of blood. And the words are very clearly expressed, the very clearly given. A pound of flesh. Only a pound of flesh. You can only take a single pound of flesh. If in the cutting of the pound of flesh you shed one drop of Christian blood, your land and goods are by the law to be confiscated to the state of Venice. And then she says, what is the condition? If in the cutting of the pound of flesh, when you cut the pound of flesh and you shed a single drop of Christian blood, what could happen? Your land, that is Shylock's land and goods, all that belongs to him, will naturally be taken away. Confiscated is taken away by the state of Venice, by the government. Now, as it was utterly impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood, this wise discovery of Portia's that it was flesh and not blood that was named in the bond saved the life of Antonio, and all admiring the wonderful sagacity of the young counselor who had so happily thought of this expedient, plaudits resounded. Now let's move on to this one once again to understand from here. It was utterly impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood. Naturally, it was very much impossible for Shylock to cut off a pound of flesh from his body without shedding a little blood. Now, this good discovery, wise discovery found by Portia, that it was flesh and not blood that was named in the bond, saved the life of Antonio. Antonio is saved because of this one single discovery of Portia, disguised as Balthazar, the counselor, and all admiring the wonderful sagacity of the young counselor who had so happily thought of this expedient. So what happened? Everyone was admiring the sagacity. What is sagacity? The cleverness, the quick thoughts of the young counselor who had so happily thought of this expedient. So expedient means advantageous position. So this wonderful sagacity, this cleverness of this or this foresight of this young counselor who had so happily thought of this expedient. Expedient is the practical point or the advantageous point that Portia saw has saved Antonio's life. Thereby she was able to save Antonio's life. Plaudits resounded, and we'll go on to the next page. But plaudits, what is plaudits? Praise. So everyone started praising the new young counselor. Plaudits means praise. Resounded means it echoed, sounded. And let's see in the next what it says. So you can see Portia talking to the Jew in a dramatic way. This is the Duke. The Duke is standing there and he is supposed to give the judgment. So plaudits resounded from every part of the Senate house, that is the courthouse. Every person started praising Portia, and Gratiano exclaimed. And what did Gratiano say? In the words which Shylock had used, O wise and upright judge, mark, Jew, Daniel is come to judgment. A little while before, Shylock had commented that a Daniel had come to judgment, because he thought she was giving judgment in favor of him. But now, when things started to change, again, what happened? Graciano, he is commenting on the same line that Shylock had said, and the same comment that Shylock has said. She says, "Oh, wise and upright judge, wise and just judge, mark, note, Jew, note it, a Daniel has come to judgment." So this is a Daniel who has come to give judgment. So he's giving this very correctly. Shylock, finding himself defeated in his cruel intent, said with a disappointed look that he would take the money. So Shylock understood that he is not going to win this case, and he is defeated in all his cruel intentions, purpose, or aims. And with a disappointed look, he was sad. He is ready now to take the money. And Bassanio rejoiced beyond measure at Antonio's unexpected deliverance. So Bassanio now was overjoyed. He cried out, "Here's the money." So he is ready to give the money immediately. But Portia stopped him, saying, "Softly, there is no haste. Be calm. Come on, stop. You don't have to be in haste or in a quick, or you don't have to be so fast. The Jew shall have nothing but the penalty." And the Jew is not going to have anything but the penalty. He should get the penalty, the punishment. So, therefore, prepare, Shylock, to cut off the flesh. So, she's once again telling Shylock to cut off the flesh. But mind you, shed no blood, nor do not cut off more nor less than just a pound, be it more nor less than by one poor scruple. Nay, if the scale turns but by the weight of a single hair, you are condemned by the law of Venice to die. So Portia tells Shylock that he should be ready to take the penalty, and he should be ready to cut off more, one pound of flesh from Antonio's body. So, and if he cuts the scale, goes a little more weight than a single hair, extra hair even, so he would be condemned. He would be thrown by the law of Venice to die. So, and all your wealth is forfeited to the Senate, and all his wealth, all his riches, all his money would be taken away by the upper court. "Give me my money and let me go," said Shylock. And Shylock understood that he is defeated completely with this case. So he tells the court that, "Give me my money and let me go. Let me take my money. I have it ready," said Bassanio. "Here it is." And Bassanio readily is agreeing to give him the money. So let's see the court here. You can see he's freed, and the what they had tied him, he has come out of it. He is no more tied up on his seat, and he's standing, and Bassanio Shylock is here in front of him on the floor. So the Duke is standing over here, you can see, and Portia, disguised as the counselor, is beside here. Portia is here, and Nerissa is, of course, beside her. Now, let's move on to the next paragraph. Shylock was going to take the money when Portia again stopped him, saying, "Tarry, Jew. Wait, Jew." So, Shylock was once again going to take the money from Bassanio, and Portia stops him by saying, "I have yet another hold upon you. There is yet another thing that you must listen to. By the laws of Venice, your wealth is forfeited to the state for having conspired against the life of one of its citizens." So the law of Venice says that since you have your wealth is forfeited to the state, it is forfeited because you have conspired against one of Venice citizen of Venice you have conspired against a citizen of Venice, and therefore your wealth is confiscated and your life lies at the mercy of the Duke. So now you have to ask pardon from the Duke. Therefore, down on your knees and ask him to pardon you. So ask pardon of the Duke, and if the Duke forgives you, you are free to go. The Duke then said to Shylock, that you may see the difference of our Christian spirit, I pardon you your life before you ask it. And the Duke said that you should see the difference between a Christian and a Jew. I am pardoning you, I am forgiving you, and I give you your life. So half your wealth belongs to Antonio. Half of your wealth will now go to Antonio, and the other half comes to the state, and half of your money will come to the government. The generous Antonio then said that he would give up his share of Shylock's wealth if Shylock would sign a deed to make it over at his death to his daughter and her husband. So Antonio further said that he is ready to give up his share of Shylock's wealth. He is not going to take Shylock's wealth, and if the condition is, if Shylock signs a deed to make it over at his death to his daughter and her husband. So he should give that money so he can enjoy his money as long as he is alive, but when he dies, his wealth should go back to his daughter and her husband. For Antonio knew that the Jew had an only daughter who had lately been married against his consent to a young Christian named Lorenzo, a friend of Antonio's, which had so offended Shylock that he had disinherited her. So Antonio said this because he knew that Shylock had only a single daughter, one daughter, his only daughter, and he who had married against his will and got married to a Christian named Lorenzo, who was Antonio's friend. So which had so much annoyed him that he had disinherited her. That is, he didn't want to give her her inheritance. Shylock is pondering over what is happening. Now, Antonio is happy and he's thinking and he's trying to give back everything. The Jew agreed to this, and the Jew is agreeing. And being thus disappointed in his revenge and despoiled of his riches, he said, I am ill. He felt sick because of all what was happening. Let me go home and send the deed after me, and I will sign over half my riches to my daughter. So he agreed on everything that Portia, as a counselor, said. Get thee gone then, said the Duke. So the Duke said, okay, fine, you go and sign it. And if you repent your cruelty and turn Christian, the state will forgive you the fine of the other half of your riches. And if you are really repenting and becoming a Christian, even the government will forgive you and give away your half of your riches to return it to you. The Duke now released Antonio. So the Duke freed Antonio and dismissed the court. The court was adjourned. He then highly praised the wisdom and ingenuity of the young counselor. So he praised the young counselor and the sincerity and the cleverness of the young counselor, and invited him home to dinner. He asked him to be at dinner time, to be at his place. Portia, who meant to return to Belmont before her husband, so Portia wanted to return to Belmont as quickly as possible before Bassanio reached there, said, I humbly thank your grace. I am very happy and I thank you for your invitation, but I must away directly. I must go away immediately. The Duke said he was sorry he had not leisure to stay and dine with him. So the Duke said that he is sorry that he could not stay with him and have dinner. And turning to Antonio, he said, reward this gentleman, for in my mind you are much indebted to him. So he told Antonio, reward this gentleman because according to me, he has done much for you. So you are supposed to be indebted to this counselor. The Duke and his senators left the court, and then Bassanio said to Portia. So Portia the Duke told uh, Antonio that look, you have a lot of obligation towards this counselor, and you owe him a lot because in terms of what he has done to you. So the Duke and his senators left the court. All legislatures and Duke all left the court, and then Bassanio said to Portia, "Most worthy gentleman." So Bassanio could not still recognize his wife, and he addressed her as "most worthy gentleman. I and my friend Antonio have by your wisdom been this day acquitted of grievous penalties, and I beg you will accept of the 3,000 ducats. So he said that I and my friend here, both of us have been freed. Acquitted means freed of the grievous, serious penalties or punishments that we were supposed to get. And so now, since you saved us, you must take this 3,000 ducats from us, due, which was due to the Jew. And we shall stand indebted to you over and above, said Antonio, in love and service evermore. And we'll always, always remain indebted to you. We'll always owe you a lot, both by love and by service. So with this, children, we have come, and justice was given to Antonio and Bassanio. And I hope you loved the story, and even the story will help you in a 10th standard when you reach 10th standard also. So 9th and 10th, both the classes, you'll have this wonderful story. You would be reading about it and you'll love it. So till then, goodbye.